Shut up and sit down.
What's up, guys? Welcome to conversation number 23. I have a very special guest here today, a man who I have considered a mentor in my life, a man I've looked up to, a guy who's always been there for me and helped teach me to be humble and to work hard no matter what. He's a former Marine, a former Navy SEAL, and he's the founder of an organization called Vetted, which helps vets transition out of the military into the civilian sectors. I couldn't be more thankful for the time that he's given to me and for all the listeners and the viewers. I'm really excited to speak with him. His name is Mike Sarraille. Mike, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here finally. Like I said a little bit offline, I've been wanting to have you on here for a while. You are perfect for the show, and I really have looked up to you. I was lucky enough to be able to work with you, and as I said earlier in the intro, amongst the many things that went with working with you guys and the support guys that I worked with, you taught me humility, and you taught me to work really hard no matter what I was doing. So thank you so much for being here today.
Dude, absolutely. Thank you for having me, and you earned your spot in every unit that you served in the military, so no thanks to me. You also exuded the humility that I love to see in the guys I serve with, the guys and the girls I love to serve with, so thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Really appreciate it. There's a lot of things that I want to talk to you about today, but before we get started, I know you've been on a lot of podcasts, you've been on, television, but for the listeners and viewers on YouTube that don't know anything about you, let's just knock out like a quick intro, like who is Mike Sarraille?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in the Bay Area, San Francisco, California, enlisted in the Marine Corps out of high school, loved it, served as a recon Marine and a sniper, and then worked with some SEALs, and I'm like, I want to do what those guys do.
Yeah.
And they had all the monkeys statistically, like, older guys, more highly educated. And so I did a inter-service transfer over to the Navy after I got my education and became a SEAL officer, and then served for 15 years. And as you know, my last 2 years were at the University of Texas as a naval ROTC instructor, getting the next generation of pipe hitters ready to carry the torch. And there are some pipe hitters. People, love to criticize the millennials, but I'll tell you what, I served with mostly millennials, and they were badass. Yeah. So every generation puts forth their best, and the best is serving in the military today, and that's about it.
Absolutely, man. Awesome. Thanks for that. I do remember. I know I had sent you a message. We were talking like a week or two ago before we got this started, and obviously you were on the Jocko podcast recently, and I listened to the whole thing. It was amazing. And like I told you, it definitely hit home with me because you covered a little bit of some of the things we had shared mutually. But one of the little things, or not little things that you had talked about, but one of the things you had talked about when you were naval ROTC, there was a guy that said, you will never become a Navy officer. I believe he said that you got counseled or something. I mean, so you're talking about being in the Marines and then changing to do this, and that you wanted to be a SEAL, but you didn't initially become a SEAL. How did you deal with somebody saying that you're never, this is what you wanted to do, but somebody was telling you that you'll never become that?
Yeah, we all care what other people think, but at that time, I was just young, immature. College was not for me. My parents really drove me to attend college, and I did. And it was not the right choice directly out of high school, and it didn't last long. Yeah. And enlisted in the Marine Corps. But I'll tell you what, for that guy, it's simply this: no factor. Yeah, you just said I couldn't make it. You gave me all the encouragement and initiative to prove you wrong. Yeah. And I did, and actually surpassed him in the SEAL teams. Funny enough.
Yeah, it's funny how that works out. I would say I absolutely agree with you 100% that really just fuels your fire. When somebody says you can't do it, no matter what it is, I think a lot of times that works inversely. It really just adds gasoline to the flames. And obviously it worked out in your favor here. And to hear that you surpassed him even is pretty crazy. And, it's not necessarily a race against whoever, for those that are listening, but I think it is funny how that works out when a lot of times, at least in my experience, when people have said that you couldn't do something, maybe a lot of times it's because they don't think they can do it themselves. Like, for example, recently, a lot of listeners know I just got out of the military myself, and I will say, professionally speaking, 100% of the people that I talked to that I said I was getting out of the military said, no way, man. You don't, for me, like, I didn't even have a college degree. I don't have an associate's degree. A lot of people know that, but they said, you're perfect for the military, stay in the military, we need leaders like you or whatever, and which may have been true, and I was very humble hearing that, and I was very appreciative of that, but at the same time, it did fuel my fire that I wanted to get out even more and show them that, I could make it. And then, of course, again, as we were talking, I did get a job, and it was a job that even required a 4-year degree, and I'd like to think I went in there and I just presented who I was and talked about everything that we're talking about right now, the integrity, the humility, and the hard work, and showed them that. And of course, you did a lot of that. And when this guy said you couldn't become what you wanted to become, it definitely, I think, pushed you harder to be that guy you wanted to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's he to pass judgment when he wasn't a SEAL yet? Same thing. That's why we always try to refrain from passing judgment on others. Disbelief from others is the greatest motivator of anyone that just wants to accomplish anything. And that disbelief, and he wasn't the only one that thought, because of, I was a pretty unruly kid in high school, that I wasn't going to amount to much. And they just didn't know me. But my parents always had faith. They're like, he's going to do something great. Yeah. He's annoying the crap out of us with all this behavior and driving us crazy. But, you touch on people saying you're not going to make it in the real world. Bachelor's degrees are a societal norm. When veterans ask me, hey, do I need a bachelor's? I say, hey, yeah, get it done. It's a societal norm. Yeah. But what society doesn't understand about our veterans in the U.S. military, and I've said this before, is the U.S. military is the preeminent leadership development program in the world. And while you might not have a bachelor's, how much time did you end up having in the military?
9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
You basically earned a master's in organizational leadership.
Sure.
And all those soft skills you were just talking about, how you could articulate your value proposition to the hiring managers, you succeeded on that, and they saw it. Now, for guys that stay in, to the 20 and 30 years, they come out with a PhD.
Yeah.
And we all served with, a lot of senior enlisted guys that don't have bachelors. But even as a mid-grade officer, I was just humbled by, the 25 years they had in the SEAL teams and just how phenomenal they were as leaders. And that is humbling. And sometimes that is, a lot of times that's lost on the private sector. And at the end of the day, it's on us to convey that value of what we bring to the table, and you did that well. So congrats.
No, thanks so much. It's definitely, it's a lot. It means a lot for me to hear you say that, and I completely agree with you, everything you've said. I think there's a lot of, this is a common thing that I hear when I'm reading or when I'm, watching the news or whatever you're getting your media from, or through what media you're getting it from. But a lot of people come out of college and they have these degrees, but they don't necessarily have the experience. And there's always the joke, the butt of the joke is these people that come out of college and they say these jobs want, I want the 4-year degree, but I want 9 years of experience already. But I want you to be young, so how can you have that? So I always find that funny, but I do know that obviously being in the military for nearly a decade, I was able to, especially working in a lot of positions that I was kind of thrown into the fire. They kind of require you to be able to become a leader quick, or you're going to get tossed out. You're going to get chewed up, and you're going to get tossed out. So it's definitely fight or flight in some of those situations. But in short, all those positions really helped me, get the job. I know they ask you a lot of questions. I'd say most of the questions, 80% of the questions, are not technical questions. They're questions like, hey, tell me a time when you did this or a time when you did that, right? Because it's showing, that those things that we keep on hitting home, the integrity, the humility, the hard work, all those things, show me examples. And then being in a military career gives you an abundance of those examples of leadership and times when you work through stress. So you're absolutely right when it comes to that. And another good thing that you said now, and I know you said in that last podcast, was who am I to judge, who's going to make it through whatever it is. And It's funny, I heard you mention it when you were at Buds. There's no way you can tell a guy that's going to make it through, but obviously that's applicable to a lot of other portions of civilian sector as well, like who's going to cut it and who's not going to cut it. And I think it just boils down to worrying about what the hell you're doing, really.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to one of your first points. So
sure.
My sort of discontent with higher education is that they're not training leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, they turn out very successful practitioners in engineering, political science, business, but they don't train leaders. It doesn't mean that fabulous leaders aren't coming out of these universities. They are. But usually you'll pinpoint some attributes or things that certain students did, like they participated in student government. They're extremely active on campus life, and they took a role to develop themselves. But as a whole, our institutions of higher education aren't turning out leaders. And funny enough, our former boss, Admiral William McRaven, and then another gentleman named General Tony Kuklo, who's his vice chancellor, and Admiral McRaven recently stepped down. Their intent was to stand up a program within the UT system to specifically focus on building leaders. So you couldn't take an elective of swimming for one semester. No, you had to take an elective on leadership every year of your 4 years. And that's what our nation lacks, is these leadership development programs. Corporations try to do it, but they lack the resources and the money to actually develop great leadership development platforms. I mean, this is what we do in the military. The single most important factor on the battlefield, and you know this, is not the radio you carry, it's not the gun you carry, it's not the airplane overhead, it's leadership and the people. And that's why we invest so heavily in our military service members. There's just intangibles that you get from the military that you can't get anywhere else. And working in ambiguous, arduous environments like we did, I think the reason I started the Vetted Foundation, and then also this EF Overwatch, which is the premier talent acquisition firm for special operations soldiers and SOF support personnel and combat aviators, is when I understand those communities. And it's just my dedication to helping my brothers and sisters in arms segue from a successful military career into a successful private sector career. Because the one thing we're seeing from all the businesses we talk to, and in less than 4 weeks, we've had 80 clients come through the door looking for one thing: their next leaders. And that is why I'm so excited with this EF Overwatch thing. It's a lot of work right now, about 90-hour weeks, but we've got a solid team and guys like you, and it's like I'm working with the boys again. Like it's like we're back at our old command and with a team of vets trying to help vets.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're doing right now. For you to be able to do what you do, and essentially a huge part of this podcast is to give examples of people that are not only hardworking, but not more importantly, but equally and differently importantly, giving back, right? Helping others. And if that's not what you're doing to the core, then I don't know what is, because you're definitely, it's such a, and you and I are both freshly transferred out, you retired, I transferred out, or separated, I should say. And it's stressful, I think, regardless of if you're getting out after 2, 4, 20, 30 years, it's definitely, they have their different stresses, I think. So for you to be able to do what you're doing and help guide the transition and give resources is really amazing. And I'm so excited to see the growth of what those organizations are doing. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. We'll get there. We'll start to change the narrative for veterans. Hey, you mentioned something that was alluding or heading in a direction is, recently come up with this term. It's about, the transition mindset for veterans. And we know there's vets out there that have this sense of entitlement, that they're entitled to a job. The private sector owes me that, and that's completely the wrong mindset. But I'm working on an article right now called the transition mindset, and it's all about how transitioning out of the military is, and I've coined this, it's really the last form of counterinsurgency warfare you have engaged in. And what I mean by that is, one, the American public is not your enemy. When you get out, you're a civilian again. Yeah. You may have the title or the card veteran, but you're a civilian again. And really, while you may be different, and you're different for good reasons, you have to find a way through counterinsurgency warfare to build hearts and minds. And you've got to get out there. You've got to engage with people. You can't hold the veteran card over their head. You have to get in there, and it's all about mindset of succeeding when you transition out and building relationships.
Yeah, absolutely agree right there. I don't think anybody, you're a veteran, but you can't use something like that as a card, kind of like what you're saying. You need to go out there. And again, I'm a huge fan of the humility. Just go out there, just show and prove everything that you learned, and really just go out there and crush it, but don't expect anything. I don't think that's a good mindset ever, to be able to go out there, especially when you're in search of a job in the manner that we're speaking out, transitioning out, separating, retiring. You can't go out there and essentially demand something because you're a veteran, that you deserve the job. You definitely need to go out there and prove that you're worthy to be hired for that job. So again, for people that don't really know, you're doing a couple different things here. You're, of course, the founder of Vetted, and then the other organization, I know you just mentioned it, it's eluding me right now.
EF Overwatch.
Yeah, and that's
or simply Overwatch.
Overwatch,
yeah.
And that's the one I know less about. So I know you just kind of talked about EF Overwatch a little bit, but then how does Vetted different, and essentially what is that about?
So my last, starting around about a year and a half before I retired, when I was still on active duty, I formed a team of veterans in the McCombs Business School, and talking with Admiral McCraven, General Kukalo, and a few other flag officers, we were not happy with the way that veterans were transitioning out of the military.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of research and came up with a platform that just, quite frankly, a middle market solution that just didn't exist. We know other platforms out there that exist, these 1 month programs to get vets ready. And then you have an MBA at the other side of the spectrum. What Vetted is that fall between, which it's not an MBA. It's more comprehensive than those 3-week or 2-week programs. And it really gives a foundation in business to vets coming out. And so 7 months, 5 months of distance education, which you can complete depending how aggressive you are, with 2 to 3 months, and that's through the Wharton Business School. And then the main piece is 2 months in-house at a top MBA program like UT McCombs, learning from the MBA professors. And here's what I put a lot of my own personal money into it that I'm not going to get back. I was happy to do it because the first cohort of 25, our placement rate, 7 had to go back to active duty because they still had a little time, and they're coming up on their transition. But for the remaining 18, 5 started their businesses. Wow. 2 already had existing businesses where they're seeing the return on the investment, and one of them is our former teammate Benito Olson, dog handler. Yeah, he's crushed.
Of course.
Talk about taking a skill from the military and applying it to the private sector. And then the remaining 11 are all placed at a starting salary of $97K. Wow. Now that is right within the range of what a starting MBA student has. So
those are amazing statistics. Because as we both are very familiar with, we know that especially vet entrepreneurship is absolutely down. And you're talking about entrepreneurship. You said people opening up businesses as well as getting placed with those degrees, but to be able to actually go out there, and especially when to me it means a lot, and I think to anybody that was involved in the program, especially when they got placed, for you to put your own money down on the line. I know you just said you don't care, and I would have done the same thing, but to go out there and really put it out there, literally put your own money out there, and to actually tangibly see people get these jobs, it even hits me home right now. Like, that's really awesome that you're doing. That's incredible. And I think it's got to mean a lot for you to be able to, risk all of that, put it down on the line, and see that come back, come full circle. It's badass.
I would say for any veterans looking to start a nonprofit is make sure you're in a good financial state, because I'm even rebuilding my own sort of foundation financially. So with Vetted, we were very close through the University of Texas of getting what it's called the Veteran Accelerated Management Program. Sure. We are very close to getting VA certified. The whole foundation of this business, to make it both sustainable and scalable, is to get the course VA certified so veterans can have skin in the game. They need to have skin in the game. Sure. To use their GI Bill to pay for the education. And the value prop of using your benefits to pay for it is already there with the starting salary and the placement rate we've achieved. Now, Overwatch because I got to make a living, and I built up this sort of domain expertise in the veteran transition space. Is I know the soft community, I know the soft direct support personnel community, and I know combat aviators because we have a guy named Dave Burke who was like one of the most qualified pilots in the military. We understand those communities, and we're going to help them first. And then we probably will have a rollout for a new program for all veterans, a placement platform, so that we're in the game helping all veterans. But that was taking that domain expertise from the nonprofit side, applying it to the for-profit side, because I can just work a lot more rapidly. A capitalistic market responds more quickly to a for-profit service, because we are a white glove service providing exceptional leaders to businesses that want leaders within their organization. And it takes a lot of prep work with the candidate side, a lot of hours to get them ready for these interviews. So exciting, a lot of work, but watching these guys get placed is worth it.
No, that's amazing. So that definitely speaks for itself. That's incredible. Thanks for sharing that. But I know as well, you said one, not vetted as a nonprofit, and the other one you almost like, not embarrassingly, but you're like, I got to make a living too. But I at one point I want to really hit home, like I firmly stand by, is that I don't think there's anything wrong with the capitalistic for-profit. There's, I think, too many times we get wrapped up in like, just because it's a for-profit doesn't mean you're like maybe truly helping people, or it just has to always, be a non-profit. You can be for-profit and still help people. And again, this is what this podcast is about. You're doing it on a much larger scale. Like, you have a company that's also making money and helping people. But I want to, and this is why, another reason this is a great example to speak with you, but you can do it for yourself too. Like, that's almost like saying, I can't better myself. I can't read a book while teaching other people what I learned from the book. I can't get something out of that book while I teach people the principles that I just learned from the book. Why can't you do both? And I think we need to implement that more. So I think it's 100% awesome what you're doing there as well. And I think for anybody that's thinking, to do one or the other, I mean, it depends what you want. There's pros and cons to both, I'm sure, and you know them much more than me, since you have your hands in both. But there's definitely nothing wrong with the for-profit.
Yeah, it's a lot of people try to get me to make vetted a for-profit entity, and maybe it was a lack of business knowledge at the time. I just couldn't see it, and I think I was too altruistic. I didn't want to charge the guys anything for the education, but we came around, and VA certification was the foundation of it. But on the Overwatch side, we're not charging the vets anything. We're putting a lot of work to prep them and make them more marketable for companies that quite frankly want leadership, and that's what everyone is looking for. There is a war for talent. It's been going on for centuries. I mean, the SEALs are always looking for talent. Green Berets are always looking for talent. You remember at the command, we were always looking for the best combat support personnel.
Yeah, it's tough.
They went through a year of screening. Everyone is looking for talent, and that game never ends, and it's not easy. So that's why I sort of, it gets me out of bed in the morning early to know that we may just help one or two vets today get placed in their next careers.
No, it's really cool. But you're right. It's very hard to find talent. It's hard to find that. It's kind of like, and sometimes I relay it back to fitness, right? Obviously, like keeping in shape, right? A lot of people in the community like keeping in shape, and it's always like, what's the quote? Time under tension, right? You want to like, I don't care if somebody goes in there or for whatever, you always hear like, oh, I did a 2-hour workout. Like, well, what the hell were you doing for 2 hours? You can go in there, and you can get a good quality workout in there if you're utilizing it correctly. And I think that comes out a lot as well. Like, you want somebody good to work for you. You want the leadership skills. It's a lot harder to find that, right? And there's a lot of similarities there. I think. I mean, I don't know if how much that makes sense, but you want quality. It's hard to find quality, and it's not just about. I don't want somebody that can come in and just essentially take up space. Like, I want to, if I'm, I'm obviously not a business owner, but if I'm a business owner, not do I want all these qualities, but I want somebody that's going to come in and do good work. I don't want just a body. Just because I need to hire somebody doesn't mean I need to hire somebody now, right? So you need to hire a good quality, somebody that's going to do very good work.
It's character and mindset. That is what you're looking for in the interview, and that's what you said when you got interviewed. They were looking at your character and your mindset. I will always take somebody with rock solid character and a mindset of extreme ownership over somebody that has a pedigree or the requisite skills for the job. Because I know if that person has character and the mindset, I can teach them and train them to the standard of what that job entails. And I think you're starting to see a shift in the private sector. And they're going back to the old adage, and you probably heard this: hire for character, train for skill. And I think the private sector got away with that, is where they just, does he have the skills or she have the skills? Hire him. And they just didn't have the mindset to lead or to be a valued employee.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that I've seen is, like I said, don't be too quick to hire somebody. And I'm sure you're learning quite a bit as you're evolving and continuing the transition into this more business type thing.
Hiring the wrong person, bringing the wrong person in your organization can be catastrophic.
No, it can be catastrophic. Exactly. Thank you. And it can be sometimes, from what I've seen, what I was trying to say is what I've seen is sometimes it takes a lot longer to get, quote unquote, rid or fire that person that you hired incorrectly or wrong. So it always behooves you to wait longer to actually get some quality in there. Maybe you have to work extra hours or you have to pay overtime, the time and a half, but it's going to be more beneficial in the long run. You don't want to just quickly fill the gap. And I think a lot of times maybe people do that incorrectly. I mean, and without knowing, but it's just something you learn after probably having been through that situation.
You couldn't be more right. For employers, we're not sitting here saying, hey, what do you think of our candidate? You need to hire him now. No, we actually encourage, if you have a long, very diligent process, if it's 3 phone interviews, 1 video teleconference, and then you're going to bring them out to your location for 3 separate interviews to interview with your entire team, we sort of look at that with a lot of respect, because they're doing their due diligence, and we would do the same thing if I brought anyone onto this team. Yeah. So I think you're right. You do see a lot of employers that just, his resume fits the bill, hire him, or her resume fits the bill, hire her, and then you just didn't do the thoroughness and all the vetting, and then it's a disaster. And actually, it's shown that wrong hires cost companies a substantial. You can't quantify it, to an exact number, but it is very costly for organizations.
Yeah. One thing I know you had mentioned again too on the most recent podcast I listened with you is the narrative of the broken warrior coming out of the military. I think you were talking about how people are thinking that vets that are coming out of the military into the civilian sector are somehow maybe not suited. Is that how the civilian sector is viewing these veterans coming out of the military?
All right, here I go. You got me on a fired up
Let's do it.
Topic here.
I'm ready.
It's really both sides of the coin.
Sure.
And I'm going to put more of the onus on the veterans. So the private sector and media have swung the pendulum so far left that we are all these broken like warriors coming out of back from the war. Dude, all our brothers have anywhere from 5 to like 20 combat deployments under their belt.
Sure.
And these guys return to society. They're highly functioning. The entrepreneurship rate of our cohort within our command is amazing. So it's a very easy path for a lot of veterans coming back to fall into that sense of victimhood that society wants them to fall into. In fact, I've got a Dutch Shepherd who's asleep right now. I won't bring him on because he'll terrorize the podcast. Is I was walking him and somebody's like, "Oh, is that a therapy dog?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? No, he's my dog. I don't need a therapy dog, thank you." But everyone thinks that all these veterans would. So we've got that side of the equation. Here's what I'll say to veterans: do not fall into it. It goes back to that transition mindset.
I was going to bring that up. Exactly right.
That transition mindset is key. Now, we veterans are partly to blame for this, and we just those ones that grab onto that narrative and write it out. The woe is me, and I'm not, I don't want to rush to judgment, but I look at some of these young veterans and it's like, dude, how many combat deployments do you have? 1? Like, hey, everyone deals with stress differently and combat differently, and I'm empathetic if they're struggling. But it's just it doesn't make sense, and it's, I think, a sense of entitlement. And the one thing I'm not going to do is say, oh, it's the millennial generation. Like, no, it's not that. Like, and a lot of the older military guys are like, hey, it's these millennials. I'm like, hey, guess what? You have millennials in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria right now.
Yeah, of course.
Fights,
yeah.
Holding the
Absolutely.
So that generation game doesn't play with me, but the bottom line is vets, 1, need to come together and we need to support one another, we're awful about that. We eat our own alive. So if you are in, let's say, San Jose, California, and you're a veteran, create a network, a group that meets every Friday and networks with business leaders, and introduce vets coming off the line, coming back to San Jose if that's their home of record, and create a network to get them jobs, and also hold them accountable. Sure. Tough love is sometimes necessary to pull a veteran aside and say, hey, dude, what are you doing? You are not representing us vets well. You're not. This is not what we taught you in the military. We taught you to leadership, to overcome, to be resilient. I know you're going through hard times. Reach out to me. We'll talk to you. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
I've got veterans reaching out to me quite a bit through LinkedIn or the EF Overwatch website. And their starting line is like, I have a job right now. It sucks. Nobody understands me. I've got PTSD, and one, I'll thank them for reaching out and build a rapport, and then I'll get right to the tough love and say, hey, listen, you need to own your workplace. If you are different than the civilians, put your ego in check, build a relationship with them, and make it work. Find a way to make it work. Make it your plaything. If you're in the sales department of a company and you're not having fun, become the top salesman, and then raise the bar for the rest of the employees. But there is fault to be placed on both sides, but at the end of the day, we can't deal with what mainstream society and how they view us. We can, with that talent mindset, say, no, I'm not falling into that. It's going to happen. I'm going to be successful. Hey, other vets, I might need a hand up, a little help, some opportunity, and that's what we're here for. This network of veterans that we have across the nation.
And that's perfectly said, and that's exactly why I love what you're doing. Like, I truly do. It's not me just blowing smoke up your ass. What you're doing, no, what you're doing is great. And it's exactly what you said. You need to go out there and make a difference, but specifically like where you said, if you're like, right now I'm in Virginia, right? We just moved up here to like West DC area, and there's not that many military guys up here, and I don't really know anybody, but reach out, find some guys, help them with the transition. I'm sure it's a tech area. I'm sure more vets are coming to this area. No matter where you are, you need to help each other, and that's what you're going out there and doing with Overwatch, what you're doing with Vetted, and you're helping them not only transition for these separatees and these retirees, but you're helping build this community. And I think building that community, what you're talking about, is extremely important, but calling it for what it is. Like, don't, and like you said, everybody handles stress differently. Maybe some people really do have PTSD, and you can experience some bad things within one deployment. My first deployment was horrific, right? I get it, and I did 3, and I'm not using me as a shining star example. I'm just saying it does happen, but it's different for everybody. That's an important thing to take away. I say that, my mind starts immediately thinking about some things, but regardless, building these communities is extremely important, and the fact that you're doing it, incredible, awesome, and I would highly encourage anybody to. You don't have to go out there. I mean, if you want to build an organization like you are doing, have at it. I highly recommend it. I hope these people reach out to you, find you. I know you'd want to talk to them and help them create something as well, but you can do it on a much smaller scale as well. You can go out there and build these small communities, these small, get-togethers, and help each other out like that. It's really easy nowadays. I mean, like I've always said, there's absolutely no reason why you can't nowadays with the internet, with the social media, the connections with LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter. Like, there's so many ways you can reach out to people and build these things. There's a meetup app you can do for any activity, but why not utilize it for something like this? Create that community that you want to see. If there's not a community, create the community that you want to see, and go out there and build it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, social media is a powerful tool. It's changed the game. In fact, through LinkedIn, that I can connect with somebody in Buffalo, New York, and we have a common passion towards something. And I've formed some very meaningful relationships over LinkedIn just by dropping people a note. It's the most foreign thing to me, but I'm starting to learn the power of social media is just it's progressive.
Yeah, it's an incredible tool, and it actually does come up a lot on this podcast, and I see no problem with that at all. For one, that's how I get to speak to a lot of the potential guests that are on the show. but whatever is right for you, you can reach out to that person, like LinkedIn, whatever it is, more business orientated. But it doesn't really matter. I think the bottom line is going out there and actually not just saying that you want to create a community or create this organization, but actually taking the steps necessary, taking that action.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, not to lead your podcast, but I was trying to think, of all the times we deployed together, if there was one story where, I lost my cool as a leader, that you could remind me, or something that just like I made a bad call and I realized it. I was trying to think of a funny story, but I just couldn't come up with one.
That you lost your cool? No. I can't really think of anything. I mean, you're always just so for people on YouTube, just like I'm doing the hand chopping motion in my hand, or for the listeners, and like you're always like boom, you were all business all the time. And we had good time. I had good conversations with you on the side, but and that's one thing. That's not a negative thing whatsoever. And obviously, a lot of the situations that we were require 100% of all business all the time. But that's one thing I noticed that there was not necessarily like an instance of when what you're describing, like a funnier incident or something that was a farce. But no, I think just one thing that definitely hit me like from the moment. I don't know when, I can't remember like when we first started working together by any means, but it was always just like boom, it's Mike, man, he's here. Like you definitely had a presence. So I thought that's was pretty cool. But it was I was like, this guy's like, he's this serious all the time, because like me being a support guy, going in there working with a bunch of not just team guys, but obviously team guys that have to go through a much more rigorous process, to say the very least, to get to where you guys were. I didn't know what to expect, and like being a new guy in the Navy, I think 2 or 3 years maybe I was in the Navy, and I came to work with you guys at tops. It was probably closer to 2 years. I had no idea what to expect, and you hear, for lack of a better word, horror stories or whatever. But I think that was one of the things that I learned very quickly was I didn't listen to anything that I heard. I just knew that I was going to go in there, and I think one of the best pieces of advice I got, I don't know if you know Paul LaPrairie, but he was in the training at the time, and I love that guy. But one of the things he told me, they said they don't give a shit about who you are. They've done everything that I've described already to get to where you're going. Obviously, I shortchanged that vastly, but you need to go out there and you just fucking put your head down and just show them that. Because initially, when we got there, for those that are in the community, I was called, you're just comms guy or whatever. And honestly, I just wanted to work. It might sound silly to anybody listening, but to me, like, I wanted to work so hard to wherever you guys were, and like, hey, comms guy this, or Romeo that. Hey, Chris, I need this again. Because you know that Chris is the guy to go to, that he can get shit done. And like, so from day one, like, that was my goal, was honestly for you for you guys to call me my first name and not just to be another number or another, Romeo. And that's how I saw it. And so I don't know. That's nothing like crazy stories. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stories, but I mean, I can't think of anything particular with you. But I know one thing that you guys helped me evolve very, very quickly was that mindset. Like I said, a lot of positions that you're thrown into absolutely require that. They force you into that. And that's a lot of who I am today is because of those situations. And I just absolutely agree with keeping your head down and just working hard and letting your work show for you. I don't give a shit necessarily. Obviously, a quote we know very well that I live by is, the deed is all, not the glory, right? Obviously, we saw that every single day walking into work. And I loved seeing that every single day walking into work. So one thing that I live by is that, and I would recommend to anybody is, who gives a shit what people think about you at any point. Obviously, it matters to a certain point, but keep your head down. Do what you need to do. If you're good at what you do, you will be noticed. You certainly don't need to tell people about it, right? And that goes back to when we started talking, having that humility, right? And all those things are really important to me. If I learned anything there going through hopefully there's maybe a comm guy or two listening, but we go through our direct support course. I didn't have as much humility coming back from my first deployment, for whatever reason, my own reasons, and I got my shell shocked, if you will, by some of the old team guys that were running the show. A1 Johnny Reimer, for anybody that knows him, absolutely put me in my place, and ever since that day, I definitely changed. So through a few deployments, and obviously, I think all this, there's a lot of points to take away from here, but one of these points is, if you're working with people that are like-minded, if you're working with people that are hardworking, that are humble, that subscribe to the deed is all, not the glory, or whatever you want to do, it's almost impossible for that not to rub off on you. So I highly suggest, obviously I talk about it a lot, and I talk about it a lot for a reason, but you obviously, the quote again goes, what are you, you're the medium or the median of, or the average, I guess is a better word, of the 5 people you hang out with. Now, I do think that's very true, and I am very subjective of who I lend my time to, who I give my time to. Now, obviously, I've been very busy with transitions myself, so it's even more so, and especially trying to get this podcast off. But through all this rambling, yes, I do, a few points to take away are of, yes, have the humility, keep your head down, and keep pushing through no matter what. And no, to answer your very first question, which got me rolling this direction, no, man, absolutely not. Nothing that I could think of. Just all fire all day, man, just laying it down, just fully automatic.
Yeah, I was pretty intense. I'm working on, taking a much more calm approach to life. You can't maintain that pace forever. But I think, at any unit, regardless of whatever level you come into, the bottom line is you have to perform. You have to do your job, especially at a place like we came from. But I just remember you because, one, you had a very niche skill that I was never going to acquire to the level you did, and leaning on the entire team and what they brought every team member to the table, again, humbled me. Whether it was a SEAL or a sailor, the team, it was the epitome of the team. And I miss the boys. Good thoughts. I know
me too.
Monday was a hard day for us both, with the loss of 7-year anniversary of Extortion 17, and all the good men that laid down their lives in the name of freedom. It's our job now to make sure that the American public doesn't forget. They may not want to hear it all the time, but so be it. We'll scream it from the mountain and find them.
Yeah, for sure. And we just, of course, as you know, I'm up here again near DC, and even when I was down in Virginia Beach, we just did, again, the 31 Mile Ruck for the 31 Heroes, and as tough as it can be, it's truly an amazing event to undertake. And I've done some really difficult things physically in my life, obviously, throwing on some gear and going on some hikes in the mountains, of course, but this was a different kind of suck. Because it's so long, but no, it's absolutely an amazing way to, like you just said, carry on the memory, because you don't know how many times we obviously we do it on the anniversary every single year, and we go out there, and hell, we're going through downtown DC at 1, 2 a.m. in the morning, and there's just kids littered everywhere, and drunk people asking, what are you guys doing? And it's, some people are drunk, a lot of, some people are sober too, but it's awesome because you're out there and you get to, I get to say so many times, what exactly we're doing. And I'm like, yeah, check this out, research this is what happened here. So it's really cool to be able to walk around DC for 12 hours. And for those that don't know, with a rucksack on, so a weighted backpack. And we have 2 bricks in there, carrying 1 brick to represent the loss of life, and then 1 brick for the burden that the families carry. It's really cool. So when you are able to do that and be able to carry on the memories in such a physical way is really cool. And then obviously we end up in Arlington and pay homage there. But it's incredible to be able to do that.
That's and let me provide you a little insight of why that sucks so much. It's called age.
What are you saying?
And,
I'm not getting older.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the body is not like scotch. it doesn't get better with age. The mind gets sharper, but the body, it's harder to keep it in the red like we used to. So no, hey man, that's great, and you're keeping the memory of the guys alive, and I'm sure you made it over to Arlington.
Yeah, absolutely.
So wish I could have been there, and maybe next year.
Yeah, man. They do it here. They do it in Tampa. I believe they do it. They might do it in California, and even I don't want to say Seattle out my ass, but they might be. And then that's one thing. If anybody's interested, I'm sure the organization would be able to be more than willing to help stand that up in whatever city or state as well. But it is always fun doing it here. Well, I use the term fun loosely, relatively speaking. But it is good doing it here and then being able to actually end up at Arlington, being able to see that directly definitely hits home. It's real hard, and it's good to be able to do that. We'd love to have you out here. We'll have to get you out here sometime. It's a big metropolitan area. There's got to be a reason for you to come out here sometime next year.
Yeah, I can always do business in DC, and yeah, it's always good to. And when I do make it out there, I stop at Arlington to pay my honor to the boys, so many of them. But at the end of the day, we're sitting here talking about a bad memory. But people ask me, like, would you do it again? In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat, no questions asked, don't need to think about it. I would do it again. All of it, both the good and the bad. And when you sit back and think about it, despite having to go through some bad times and combat deployments, we are the fortunate ones. We are the blessed, because the memories we have with the guys and the girls to our right and our left, we served with the best, with America's finest, that put their lives on the line. And so for that reason, I consider myself and all the veterans, we're lucky. Yeah. We are lucky. And we should be humbled and honored that we had the opportunity to serve our country. Barna.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And even though, it is a negative note, but obviously it is the bad times in life, and it's the negatives and the downs that not necessarily you need them to appreciate the up times and the good times, but it definitely does help you appreciate it. And as much as I do, that either of us were in that position, and those guys especially in that troop would do it again in a heartbeat. Just as you said, you do it in a heartbeat. They were going out there to help other people in short, and they would do it again in hopes to help them as well. So yeah, we are definitely the lucky ones, but anybody involved would do it again in a heartbeat. You're 100% right.
Damn right.
Yeah. Mike, how can people find you on? I want to know how people can find you if they're interested in Vetted, if they're interested in Overwatch, you name it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for Overwatch, which again is a talent acquisition firm for special operations forces, special operations support personnel, and combat aviators, it is EFOverwatch.com, all one word. And if you're a soft soldier that's already out, and when I say soft for the American public, that's special operations forces, or a former SOCOM support personnel with any of the soft communities, or a combat aviator, contact us through the website. If you're looking for a new career, we will help you. Here's the only thing we look for is you got to be humble. You got to put your ego in check, and you got to be ready to work your ass off. Because if we're going to put you in a position, we expect you to maintain the reputation of veterans, and especially your respective communities. And if you don't exude those two things, plus the mindset of extreme ownership, we're not for you, and we'll find another resource that will help place you in the private sector. And then for Vetted, again, we're so close to VA certifications, and this is going to be a game changer. This thing is going to scale across the nation. It is by far, even Huffington Post hailed it as revolutionizing the way that veterans exit the military. You can go to vetted, vetted.org, and I've got a power team, a former female veteran, Cassandra, Dr. Melgar is her COO, and Claudia. They are crushing it. The women, now remember, Vetted was first run by a team of guys, to include myself, and then we brought these three female veterans in, and they are outperforming us to a team. It is humbling, awesome. And I'm just glad to see the organization is doing well under the new leadership and management team.
That's awesome. Mike, I'm so, again, humbled. I know I've excessively used that word, but again, to be able to speak with you is incredible. It was good catching up. It was good being able to share everything that you're doing right now, and then just shooting the shit and just really putting out there and showing that hard work will get you what you want. You might not always get it immediately, but I am a firm believer that in the long run, you put your head down and you push hard, you will get there eventually. So thank you very much.
Well, hey, brother, miss you. Look good.
Absolutely.
You're doing great work. Keep it up. Keep the memory alive of our brothers, and keep representing veterans as you've done. And we will reconnect soon.
Absolutely. Mike, it was a pleasure, and look forward to keeping in touch with you, and we'll talk soon, man.
All right, brother.